Great. I'd like to welcome everyone this evening to the regular session of council for the 11th day of July 2023. I'd just like to remind everyone that this evening's meeting is being recorded and live streamed to the Town of Greater Napanee YouTube channel. Having said that, we'll now call the meeting to order. We'll deal with their closed session matter, which we had earlier this evening. We had a closed session meeting pursuant to section 239 of the Municipal Act, scheduled from 5 to 6:30 in order to discuss a personal matter about an identifiable individual with respect to section 239 2B of the Act. I'll look for a motion to rise and report from closed session. Moved by Deputy Mayor Calver, seconded by Councillor Martin. All in favor of that motion? Opposed? Motion's carried. I'd like to report from closed session that we approved the closed session minutes from June 27th and received for information a confidential human resources report regarding the process of posting and assessing candidates for the position to provide marketing support to the downtown core and provided staff direction. Having said that, we'll look for a motion to adopt the agenda as presented. Moved by Councillor Pennell, seconded by Councillor Hicks. If there's no further comments, questions, or concerns, all in favor of that motion? Opposed? Motion's carried. Is there any disclosure of pecuniary interest and the general nature thereof? Seeing none. This evening, we're going to start off with presentations. And I have to admit that this is going to be probably the highlight of my tenure with respect to this term of council. We're going to do a presentation for the 2023 Senior of the Year Award. And what I'd like to do is read, and I know it's probably in our agendas, I'd like to read what was provided to council from the community with respect to this man. Bill Pearson has been a longstanding volunteer and active community member in the town, in the Napanee region for many years. He has influenced countless young people throughout his career as a teacher at the Napanee District Secondary School and has volunteered in many capacities over the years, ranging from town council to volunteer firefighter. The volunteer role that I would like to focus on is his commitment to establishing the Greater Napanee's Gymnastic Club over 50 years ago and his ongoing role as the president of the club at age 81, or sorry, at age 80. I don't want to date you any more than we need to, Bill. Bill's love of gymnastics started as a child when he participated in programs at the YMCA. In 1967, Bill began his teaching career at the Napanee District Secondary School and started a high school gymnastics team for boys and girls. He coached the boys and girls team from 1967 to 1981, when unfortunately the boys program was no longer supported by OFSAA, the Ontario Federation of School Athletic Association, and ended. Bill continued with the girls' high school gymnastics program until 2019, when the OFSAA canceled the girls' program as well. During his time running the high school program, he started a weekly community program for junior gymnastics. The program was both a means of offering organized sport to those in the community and a means to fundraise to purchase new and additional equipment, as there is no financial support for the school board. The 30 to 40 students on his high school team would teach the younger children basic gymnastic skills and help others develop a love for the sport. In the 1990s, interest grew and the program expanded 2 nights per week, hosted at the NDSS and the gymnastics room. This program gave the younger athletes an opportunity to explore new things and help the students develop valuable and transferable skills that would be useful throughout their lives. Bill retired from teaching at NDSS in the late 1990s. But he continued volunteering to run the high school club and the junior gymnastics program. Eventually, the school needed the space that the gym club was using, and they had to make a tough decision: terminate the programs or find new space to practice gymnastics. The demand for a local gymnastic club was high, and Bill, along with the help from parents of the gymnasts, decided to move from a high school's team and community program to become a full-fledged gymnastics club that was registered with Gymnastics Ontario. It took a full year to research and plan to make that transition. The first home of the Greater Napanee Gymnastics Club outside of NDSS was in the old bus barn. It was tough to find a wide open space with high ceilings that could meet the needs of the gym club. The building was old with no insulation and an oil furnace that was persnickety. Pipes froze and burst, and there were many challenges, yet Bill persevered. Under Bill's leadership, the club continued to expand. He applied for and received a Trillium grant that enabled the club to purchase a spring floor, uneven bars, beams, and looked more and more like an actual gym club. After 7 years on a space that wasn't suitable, they were able to upgrade again and move to the current location at 25 Snow Road. Bill did all of this in his retirement as a 100% volunteer. Because of his efforts, the club grew and grew and now serves over 500 children throughout the Lennox and Addington area on an annual basis. The club now operates 7 days a week, offering parent and taught programs, kinder gym, recreational level classes, and competitive programs. It recently added an adaptive gymnastics for children with physical, cognitive, social, and developmental needs that may prevent them from joining the regular programming. They offer school field trips, day camps, and birthday parties as well. Children of all ages benefit from the Greater Napanee Gymnastics Club. Toddlers and their parents can enjoy it in a safe environment. Kids can develop basic coordination skills and push themselves to do more. And the competitive program sends kids to meets around the province to show off their skills and proudly brings home many, many medals, proving that the Greater Napanee Gymnastics Club offers a high quality programming. The Gymnastic Club also offers employment opportunities for local high school students, many of whom are current or former gymnasts. This allows students to develop confidence and leadership skills while teaching the next generation the importance of being active. Our head coach has also reached the national level of certification in coaching and in judging. Bill's philosophy has always been that no child should miss out on an opportunity to participate due to lack of funds. He was always willing to work with the families to provide options or alternative forms of payment so that each child can participate in the joy of gymnastics. This remains true to the current day as many families are struggling with the current economy. Bill's efforts regarding the Gymnastics Club began well before he reached the age of 65. His commitment and efforts continue to this very day, even at the age of 80. Bill puts in full-time hours, ensuring that the Gymnastic Club is successful and meets the needs of the community, all while continuing roles as a supply teacher and bus driver. Bill is an active president of the club, building a team that will continue with the successes when the time comes. He remains involved in everything from changing garbage to washing towels to cheering on the kids. He is now seeing the third generation of gymnasts coming through the club. He remembers everyone's name and knows those children, who those children are. He remains involved in everything from changing the garbage to washing towels and cheering on the kids. He is now seeing the third generation of gymnasts coming through the club, remembers everyone's name and knows whose children they are. It is inspiring to see adults come in and say, "Hi, Mr. Pearson." And to let him know that they have enjoyed their time at the club or in high school when they were younger, and now they are bringing their children in for those experiences. If you ask anyone in the town about Bill Pearson, they will smile, acknowledge the impact that Bill has had on this community over the years. At the age of 80, Bill continues to give 110% to everything that he does, proving that life doesn't have to slow down in retirement. He is the most deserving individual of the 2023 Senior of the Year Award, and I thank you for your consideration. Bill will be flipping amazed to learn that he is a recipient of this award. See the video of Bill doing a backflip at the age of 74. Now, unfortunately, I didn't see that backflip, but I'm sure it was something special. I don't think there's anybody in this community that doesn't know Mr. Pearson. He has had an influence not only on a generation, but a decade of generations. And in my world, if every community had a Bill Pearson, this world would be a so much better place to live. And I say that from the deepest of my heart. I told Bill I wouldn't embarrass him at all. And I know probably the most toughest thing he has done in his 80 years is come here tonight and receive this award, because that's not who Bill Pearson is. But we're going to make him come up and we're going to give him the award anyway. So come on up, Bill, and we'll give you an opportunity to speak if you want. More than deserving of this. Don't have to if you don't want to, but congratulations. There you go. The stage is yours, my friend.
Terry, it's been a while since you've been in my class too. Yeah. Oh my God.
We don't want to talk about grade 10 biology, Bill. We really don't.
I could look up your marks. I still have them.
I'm sure you do.
Oops. You know what, Terry? I was just going to say thanks, and it's been a slice. Thank you so much. But holy smoly, where did you get all that information?
I have my sources, Bill, and I was going to try and raise something up myself, but I couldn't have said it any better myself. The words that were in that report or in that submission were absolutely perfect.
You know, it must be something to having been a police officer before, because you did some investigating, I think, and you found some things out that I'd forgotten about. Well, yes, you know what? It has been a long time since the high school and the Trump-Wager bus barns, and we have come a little bit. Now, you know what, Terry? The last time I spoke in front of council, I made a hash of it because I was very emotional, and I'm damn near that way now. So I just don't want to get that way if I can not be too mushy or anything like that. But, you know, I had just lost my seat on council, but you know what? There is life beyond council. I have to tell you, and I don't mean to be ignorant to anybody here on council, but there is a whole mess of stuff you can do, and it gave me more time for things that I have really enjoyed doing. You know, being an old fart has its advantages, because you can express an opinion and give your opinions sometimes when they're not really that wanted, but you can do it anyway, because they can always say, oh, don't listen to that old fart. He just rambles on. He just rambles on and on, like I'm doing right now. My wife is saying, cut it, time. Oh, Gail, you're looking out for me. I know you are. Anyway, Terry, thank you very much. Council, thank you very much. I do appreciate that. Billy, the one thing I miss more than anything, Billy Hammond there, I miss being on those red trucks. That was a good thing. I enjoyed those red trucks. Now I can just watch them. And occasionally the guys, when they go by my house, they'll give a little toot on the air horn. And I said, yep, they've gone by again. Okay, and when you're responding to the west of town, I stand there in a window and I count the trucks and say, okay, where are they going? Oh, well, they got the aerials. Oh, they got the tanker. Must be on the edge of town. It must be something. Anyway, it's a game now. But someday you're going to have to break down, and just for old time's sake, you're going to have to let me ride the back seat, just for the heck of it, just because I'm old.
We might be able to get you riding a fire truck, Bill. We might be able to do that.
You know what? That would be nice. I would really enjoy that. Terry, thank you so much. Council, thank you so much. And heads of departments, managers of departments, I get my terminology mixed up. But anyway, I don't have to report on it now. I don't have to really worry about it. You guys do your jobs and I just watch it. Whoa, man, that's what's happening, eh? Okay.
Thanks, Bill. Thank you. Thank you from council. thank you for the community and thank you personally. You have influenced my life and I really appreciate it. Take good care and we'll book a ride on the fire truck in the not too distant future.
Do you know what? I would enjoy that so much.
We might even let you wear a helmet.
Well, I could bring my own.
Oh,
I've
suppose,
still
eh?
got my
You
helmet.
Probably still got it.
I do.
We'll dig it out of the closet, okay?
I still got an old turnout coat too. By the Jesus, I could do that.
We'll get you all set up then.
Woo.
Thanks, Bill. Very great, very much appreciated. That is going to be an extremely tough act to follow. But moving on, deputations. We've got at least 2 deputations this evening. First up would be Dennis Mills with respect to the removal of the heritage designation on the Cartwright building at 89 Thomas Street East. Dennis, come on up. I think I've left the one microphone on there. If you could just make sure that you talk into it, bring it up nice and close so that the folks at home can hear your words. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Your Worship, members of council, staff, and fellow citizens. Yes, thank you. I am here to speak about the proposal to remove the designation from the Cartwright House, which is better known as the former jailer's house, turnkey's house. And the good news I'll share with you, I forgot to bring my speaking notes. So I promise to be concise and precise. The key points, and you have my deputation. I will hit a few highlights and offer a few additional comments. First of all, this was a designation approved by council 48 years ago under bylaw 7594. And at that time, it was deemed to be significant enough that it should be protected under the Ontario Heritage Act. So you have to ask, what has changed? It's nearly a half century older. It's a fine example of Italianate architecture. And over that period of time, we have lost many others all through the town of Greater Napanee. The significance has not changed. It still maintains its importance as part of our original upper tier municipal government, one of 4 important properties that were protected under that bylaw. So this is a proposal to repeal only a part of that bylaw. It will not affect the courthouse, the former jail, and of course, the museum and archives now, and the registry office. But you do have to wonder, what is the intent behind this? And clearly, it is an attempt to remove it for no apparent reason other than it's falling into disrepair. And if you're familiar with the Heritage Act, you know that council has a responsibility to ensure that designated properties are protected. If the owners of properties allow them to fall into disrepair to a key point, it's council's responsibility to intervene, conduct the repairs, and assess those costs to the owner, whether it's privately owned, a corporation, or in this case, another tier of municipality. So there is protection under the Act. To use that as an excuse, that is what we know, and they call it demolition through neglect. And unfortunately, it's become very common. If you want to get rid of a building, let it fall into disrepair and then say, oh, it's beyond repair, we can't save it. So we'll tear it down and cart it away and put it in the dump. So turning to the bylaw, originally, the cultural heritage statement protected it for its historic significance. And under the Heritage Act, it gives you very clear guidelines under 3 areas they call heritage attributes. And those attributes are 1, design and architectural significance. It is an important late Italianate architectural design for Napanee. Napanee is known for its Italianate architecture, but as I said, over the past 48 years, we have lost many. and many of them have fallen into, unfortunately, inappropriate repairs or remodeling. In this case, all of the original architectural attributes are still present. It's the low-pitched roof, it's the deep eaves with decorative brackets. It still maintains all of its original window openings. The front door has been replaced, but the opening is still the original. So it is definitely a good example that has survived in spite of it being neglected for a period of time. The second attribute is known as historical significance. In this case, I don't think anyone is surprised to know it was protected because it's one of 4 critical buildings in that municipal precinct owned by the county. And to lose one, it's like losing a front tooth and a smile. You lessen what remains. Significance comes because they all survive as part of their original municipal plan. So please consider the historical importance of maintaining all of those properties together as a reminder about the early days of municipal government at a higher tier level, county government. The third category is called cultural significance. And the simplest way to describe that would be, you might think in terms of, okay, is it part of the community? Is it part of the neighborhood? Is it recognized? Would people miss it if they go there? In this particular case, it's culturally significant because it has been there a long time, since 1891 when it was built. It has managed to survive. It has been used by the county, as you know, in many different ways. It was used as the center for the finance department for the county at one point. It's also used by social services. The death knell came, of course, or the change in its use, when they built the Quinte Detention Center. So the loss of the jail, and it survived. Whoops, excuse me. It survived because it's has been converted and is a wonderful example of repurposing heritage architecture as the archives in the museum. Luckily, the county building survives. It's maintained, and they've put a successful addition on it. Registry building is now used for storage, and so is the Cartwright House. It has a function right now, but at a time when our properties are so vulnerable with a lack of protection, like I said, 48 years ago it was important to protect it. So what has changed now? Do we not appreciate our cultural roots? Is it because it's that much older? We don't consider it important as part of our history, part of the story of our community. So I really wonder where this is coming from in terms of who is making recommendations without seriously considering the importance of it. Finally, I want to turn to that whole aspect, and I gave you a heads up on that in my deputation. In the 21st century, luckily, most communities around us, big and small, big cities, we have made the shift from demolition to repurposing. And luckily, we see that happening in Greater Napanee. If you've looked at the main street, Dundas Street in Napanee, you will see what's happened. The owners have seen the economic, aesthetic, and unique value of those properties. The Royal Bank has done a superb job, but compare the Royal with other banks like the Bank of Montreal and TD, who demolished beautiful, buildings in order to build these little square modern boxes. That doesn't add to our uniqueness. Other communities have preserved their municipal precincts. The best known, of course, if you've been to Brampton, the Peel Heritage Complex. They have maintained, like many other towns, all of the main buildings, all 4 still survive. They have all been wonderfully repurposed. It is a major tourist attraction in downtown Brampton. So don't underestimate the possibility of repurposing in order to maximize. A few other success stories, L&A Mutual. You've all seen what happened with the old feed mill. That repurposing, according to the CAO, it costs less money to repurpose the old feed mill than it would have been to tear it down, cart it away, and build some new square box on the site. Why do people come to Napanee and photograph that? Because they've made it distinctive, they've made it unique. My final example would be the waterfront restaurant, which was at one time an old ice storage stone building, which almost disappeared. It has been rescued by a couple of previous owners, and look at it now. Look at the number of people it attracts. So don't underestimate the possibility of making the Cartwright House also significant in terms of building and protecting our infrastructure. I have spoken already about this concept of demolition through neglect. It is an excuse for being negligent if you own a property. Your responsibility, especially if you're a level of government, you should be maintaining them. You own properties, I'm sure many of you, if you ignored your property, the value would go down and it would fall down around you. So that's called demolition through neglect. And fortunately, it's not happening as much as it did a generation ago because people see the economic value in these properties today. Final thing I would say is, please consider it carefully. I know that you're going to consult. I hope some of you will get to the archives. There's a huge historical file on all of the properties over there under that bylaw, 9475, and you will also find in your own historical records lots of information. So I don't think anything significant has changed here. If anything, I think the cultural heritage value of the property has gone up rather than down. So I'm asking you to consider it carefully, because if you allow the repeal to go through, you are really being complicit in erasing the cultural heritage of Greater Napanee. So please consider carefully. And I know if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. Thank you.
Yep, thank you. Thank you very much, Dennis. Very well said without notes. Thank you very much. Does anybody from council have any questions of Dennis with respect to his deputation? Seeing none, thank you very much, Dennis, for coming. And as you know, we'll have a further conversation later on this evening's meeting. So thank you very much. Did we want to note and receive? Okay, we'll look for a motion to note and receive the presentation of Dennis Mills with respect to the heritage designation on the Cartwright building. Moved by Councillor Hicks, seconded by Councillor Martin. If there's no further comments, questions, or concerns, all in favor of that motion? Opposed? Motion's carried. The next deputation we have is the County of Lennox and Addington removal of the heritage designation Cartwright building, and I believe Mr. Wager is here. Hi, Chris, welcome. I understand you. Oh, there we go. We've got a presentation that's come up on the screen, and I'm sure it'll come up at home just whenever you're ready. And I think the microphone's on, so I'll just remind you that you need to talk fairly close to it, and that way the folks at home can hear you. So thanks.
Perfect. Thank you, Your Worship, and members of council. I'll try to keep this brief. As stated in the previous presentation, the Cartwright building was constructed in 1891. And it was named after R.J. Cartwright, who donated the property to the County of Lennox and Addington when they separated from the County of Frontenac. Historically, it was used as the jailhouse staff, and more recently as office space, and currently as cold storage, such as seasonal tools, surplus furniture, and staging area for items identified for disposal, such as broken chairs and whatnot. So a little bit of history on that. 2 reports have been taken to council that review and discuss the current status of the Cartwright building. Council's direction from the first report in February of 2022 was only complete repairs, upgrades that have already been awarded and are essential to maintain the current condition of the Cartwright building. The second resolution by council was to send a letter of request to the upcoming Greater Napanee Heritage Committee meeting, outlining a plan to preserve the history of the Cartwright building with the request for delisting the heritage status of the Cartwright building. Currently, the condition index for the building is 65.6, which is classified as critical. My apologies. not clicking hard enough. There's no utility services to the building since the mid-90s, and the building condition assessment has recommended $500,000 worth of repairs over the next 10 years. And the current building value, according to the building condition assessment, is $550,000. So for those of you who might not know, it's the little red building just west of the museum. And here's some exterior photos of the building from all angles, north, south, east, and west. And some interior photos of the building, which shows the staircase of the main entrance. That is one of the original staircases, or the original staircase in the building. But the majority of the walls and paneling are 1970s. The original openings do exist, but all the windows and doors have been replaced. And then you have a picture of the basement and then the back storage room. So from the county's perspective, we recognize that it is a building that was used as part of the county campus. But in order to bring information to county council, sorry, microphone's dropping. In order to bring information to county council, staff has been directed to look at all options. Demolition is an option that we're looking at. We're also going to look at relocating the building, moving it, rehabilitation of the building, looking at when we rehabilitate the building to actually use it for a public space or staff space. Obviously, they all come with costs. Another option is potentially, if there's a super library that the county builds, having that building as part of it, similar to what we've done with the museum additions and the courthouse addition. But again, with the proximity of where that building is, it would require relocation, which to my understanding would require the de-designation from the heritage list. So the use and the location of the building doesn't provide a significant value to the county and its tax base of its services. That's where it sits now and its existing use. There is no significant or unique architectural design features specific to that building that's not found in other buildings in the town of Greater Napanee. The building does, it doesn't meet the requirement to be designated as a heritage. Sorry, it does, I don't know why I say it does not meet, it does meet, sorry, it does meet the requirements to be designated as a heritage under, I think it's section 7, where there's a significant person involved. And again, going back to the Cartwright, RJ Cartwright was, grew up in Kingston. He was a political member. He supported Sir John A. Macdonald and then Wilfrid Laurier, and became a political figure. He even started, I believe it was Commercial Bank of Canada, which was supported farmers in the area. So we do recognize that, but there is a cost to maintain it. So in its current state, just to maintain it, to turn it back into the 1970s look, it's $500,000. To renovate that, to make it into a public space, which would be the next option, that is the least costly amount, you're looking at $1 million plus. And again, county staff will be bringing a report to county council, looking at all options available. And if demolition is an option, then that's something we'll look at. But we want to look at all options so that county council can make an informed decision. And as far as financing, one thing I'd like to add is any dollar spent in the county, 38% of that comes from the town of Greater Napanee's taxpayers. So it's unfortunate. Like, we do have to look at costs at the end of the day. Most of our decisions are based on cost if it's not a safety concern. And considering how strapped municipalities are, we need to look at all options and do something that's best for the people of Greater Napanee and the county of Lennox and Addington. I'll be happy to answer any questions should council have any.
Yep, thanks, Chris. And I see that we do have some questions. Go ahead, Councillor Pennell, and then I'll go to Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Worship, through you, Chris. Thank you very much for the presentation. Maybe I could just ask you to clarify, when you started off, you said that council directed staff to just do a certain amount of work to the building. Could you just please clarify for everybody here in the room and at home that that was county council?
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, that was county council directed staff to maintain it in its current condition. Again, recognizing that, you know, we don't want it, we don't want to go to a point of disrepair, but we need to put a minimum amount of money to maintain it at its current condition so it doesn't degrade further, so that we can potentially rehabilitate it at some point. Like, again, like you've got to spend some money to keep it where it is now.
Thank you. And just follow up to that.
Yep, go
Or
ahead.
just my
Councillor Pennell.
second one, we'll get it out of the way, is that thanks to Mr. Mills by bringing up that was 48 years ago. I did have a written out here that at one point in history, it was deemed enough that be designated as a heritage building. And I too have the question of what has changed other than a dollar value. It seems to be where it's located is tucked out of the way. So I can't see that being tore down or moved for something else going in there. But my thoughts are that if it was 48 years ago, important enough to have a designation, a heritage designation put onto it, by us voting to remove that today or in the future would be simply the same as ripping a page out of the history books. And I just cannot see that. So, but I do appreciate you coming and giving us this presentation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Pennell. Councillor Martin, go ahead.
Yeah, Chris, thanks for your presentation. You were present when our Heritage Committee toured the building over there.
That's right.
I know the interior of the building is in pretty rough shape, but the exterior of the building, to me and to others who were present that day, didn't look that bad. It didn't look like the brick really needed pointing necessarily, but the foundation looked fairly intact to me. I know the inside is in very bad shape, what I'm saying. But also you mentioned that day that the county doesn't really have a use in mind right now for that building. Is there any reason why that building couldn't remain as it is with minor repairs to it? I don't know if the roof is in that good a condition or not. Is the roof part of the problem, or?
No, sorry, through you, your worship. The roof was replaced, I believe, back in 2010, 2012. The roof is in good condition. The brick exterior is in fair to good condition. But those are really the only two aspects of the building that are in good condition. The foundation is listed as needing some major repairs. There's a lot of cracking that you don't see in the limestone below grade and around where the sill of the brick sits on the interior end of the building. But to answer your question, that building could remain in its current state with minimal dollars for the next 10 years. But under one of our items in our strategic plan is for the future use of the Cartwright building. So again, to bring back options for county council to decide on the future use of that building, like should they want to maintain it as in its current state, which I left that out in my presentation, but that's an option, is just leave it the way it is and we'll maintain it at its current state, or rehabilitate it or move it, or look at something similar to the Gibberts building where, you know, maybe we save 2 walls of it and expand on it. Those are all options that should be on the table and should come with estimates to council as far as potential uses when we do those type of renovations. But also demolition needs to be on the table as well if it's an option for council to consider.
Right. Thanks, Chris. Yeah, the part that bothers me is that you don't actually have a use for it right now. Like if it's removed, there's no plans for anything, so it doesn't have to be removed. So, but it really bothers me, some of the historical buildings, if we lose them, we're never going to get them back. That building has historical, I mean, it touches all three designation points. The Heritage Committee, our Heritage Committee here in Napanee, we debated at the last committee meeting, and like everybody mentioned, all three designations. It was designated, what, 48 years ago? So I see no need to remove the designation now, for sure. Myself, that's my personal opinion, and that's the opinion of our Heritage Committee, our last meeting we had. It really bothers me that the county would consider tearing it down or removing it. I mean, I don't see any point in moving it to another location whatsoever. You did point out there's other buildings in Napanee of the similar architecture, and yes, there is, but I think because of the nature of what it was used for in the past, it needs to stay on that property, as well as I would love to see it repurposed as, like, I think a library was mentioned with maybe an extension on the rear or whatever, but anything other than removing the designation, I would be in favor of. I'm not in favor of removing that designation myself personally, but I thank you for your points, and I realize you have a job to do, and you're pointing out the different things that the county can do with it. So I appreciate you being here tonight. Thanks, Chris.
Thank you.
Thanks, Councilor Martin. Is there Councilor Hicks? Go ahead.
Through you, your worship. Thanks for the presentation, Chris, and thank you, Dennis. Lots to think about. I'm looking at these photos. Looks to me like a serious decluttering needs to happen before you can really get a true picture of the interior. Is that something that could be factored in? I don't know. There's kids that need volunteer hours. Is there anything that can be done to clear out all the junk and actually get a true picture of what it is you're dealing with?
Well, a lot of that junk is just the paneling and materials from the actual building itself. There's ladders and there's doors and chairs in there, but as far as the walls, the paneling, everything interior other than the staircase and the flooring, that's all been replaced. It's all 1970s era construction. So it's in disarray because it's just thin paneling, and you get staff moving big ladders and chairs, and the carpet gets ripped or a hole gets put in a wall, and it's been left because it hasn't been used. Like, it's unfortunate, but we can't with the standards, and we can't allow the public access to the building. They can see it from the outside. They can touch it from the outside. So looking at, moving it to be relocated elsewhere in the county or becoming like part of a larger library, that might be able to give them the opportunity. If it's the Cartwright Hall, which is attached to the library, and that's, it has some heritage to that. And then within that, in that portion of the library, you could actually explain that it was a previous jailer's residence, and here's where it was on the courthouse campus. Or even if it was fully demolished, similar to Artillery Park in the city of Kingston, you could have some pictures and artifacts within the county museum itself, which again, people can then see and understand where, right now there's no public access and there's no staff access or use, even to bring that up for staff access with the accessibility standards. And you're looking at, again, $1 million plus to rehabilitate that building for use.
Thank you.
Yep, thanks, Councilor Hicks. Is there any other questions or comments? Yeah, go ahead, Councilor Martin.
I just wanted to add one more thing. The Cartwright family was instrumental in donating property to the town of Napanee, not just the Cartwright building. It's my understanding there was other properties. And I think their contribution to the town should be respected as well. So I think that's another reason why we should be keeping the Cartwright building. Sorry, I just wanted to add that, Your Worship, to that.
You know, that's good. And I think it's an important piece, an important piece of the puzzle. So thank you. Is there any other comments or questions with respect to Mr. Wager's presentation? Go ahead, Chris.
Sorry, if I could just follow up on that, just for clarification, the building was donated, was built after the land was donated, and it was just named the Cartwright building, but he didn't live there or anything, right? Like
Correct. I was just referring to other land here in Napanee that the family did donate, not that particular
Oh.
land.
Sorry.
Yep, thanks, Chris, and thanks, Councilor Martin. Is there any other further questions? Seeing none, I think most of my questions have been answered. I'll have some more comments later on as we're going to address this later on in the meeting, but it's hard to replace the heritage. It really is. It's difficult, and we lose heritage buildings every day by means that we have no control over, but we have control over this one. So that's important to me. But hang around, Chris. We'll be talking about this later this evening. So, and it shouldn't be too long an evening. So
Perfect. Thank you.
we'll look for a motion to note and receive Chris's presentation. Moved by Councillor Hicks, seconded by Councillor Pennell. If there's no further comments, questions, or concerns, all in favor of that motion? Opposed? That motion is carried. We do offer up still the opportunity for an unscheduled deputation. Is there anybody in the body of the council chambers that wish to yep, come on up, ma'am. We'll get you to, we won't be able to let you go on as long as some of the others, but if we can just get you. Yep, and my 3 minutes are sometimes fatter than most, but we'll just get you to identify yourself first.
Yeah, I'm Heidi Lind and I'm a member of the Heritage Committee. I didn't intend to speak, but there are a couple of things that I'd like to address. So
Yep, just if you could just, I think Madam Clerk is going to give me the evil eye here saying that we need a motion to accept unregistered deputation. So just give me 2 seconds. Moved by Councillor Martin, seconded by Deputy Mayor Calver. If there's no further comments, questions, concerns, all in favor of that motion? Opposed? Motion's carried. Sorry, Ms. Lind, the floor is yours.
thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council, for letting me have these few minutes. I'm here just to point out that I believe very strongly that you're being asked to make a very important decision based on missing and confusing information. Now, we know there's a lot of information. There was a lot of information attached to the agenda. As a member of the Heritage Committee, I've had access to all kinds of information about heritage designations at every level, the municipal, provincial, federal. So all of that is available. Sorry. That the Heritage Committee, for example, could bring to you. The reason that you don't have an extensive presentation from the Heritage Committee on this building is because it was essentially clear cut. It meets all of the designations. I know that now there is a new program with the federal government or with the provincial government, the New Homes Built Faster, that is essentially weakening some of the Heritage Committees or designations across the province. We know that. We could still make a presentation to you to support not removing this building. But I don't think that's necessary right now. I don't think it should be necessary. What really concerns me is the reason given for potentially removing this and the information supporting that. For example, in the paperwork, in the agenda package for tonight, there was all kinds of information about the costs. The building assessment report that was done a couple of years ago. I'd like to suggest to you that that report would have cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. And yet the county cannot put downspout extensions on the eaves trough to direct water away from the foundation of that building, which in the assessment report, the foundation was one of the problem areas. So there's numbers being, in my opinion, just thrown around liberally. For example, the rehabilitation costs from that report that was given to the county were in the region of $500,000 for major repairs and replacements, windows, doors, and so on. if the building were to be rehabilitated to be used as offices, there's a higher set of requirements, and that is what would require more like $1 million. It's actually $1.2 million in the information you have as part of the agenda package. But nobody is saying $1 million needs to be spent to turn that building into an office building. And I also found it very confusing in the county's presentation where it says that $500,000 is required to maintain it in its current condition. Well, its current condition has also been described as being at like 62%. It's, you know, it's failing. Are they going to spend $500,000 to keep it in poor condition, or are they going to spend $500,000 to put in new windows and doors and so on? How are you supposed to know? I think council needs more clear information. When it comes to the options, including it being used as part of an addition to a library, I've never seen that in anything. And I have read everything, all of the presentations, all of the background. So these are, I think, almost carrots or they're just put out there to confuse you. And I'm asking you, please don't be confused. Please, if you need more information from the Heritage Committee, we will do a deep dive into the archives. But when it comes to taking that designation away, I think most of us believe very strongly that all that is carte blanche to bulldoze it. And what to it's been described that it could be turned into an enhanced park area or like open space for the public or more parking. That is in the county's paperwork. Well, I live a few houses away from that building. They don't need more parking. And there's a beautiful green space there already. I think the suggestion that if you don't approve the removal of the designation, that the county, one option might be to do nothing, and then that would lead to demolition from neglect. Well, that sort of stands on its own as a kind of a threat. So all I'm asking, and I know I've spoken very quickly, all I'm asking is that you don't make a decision this important based on unclear or incomplete information, because once that building's gone, it's gone. And as far as Mr. Cartwright, that man, he donated so many important lots in this town. 4 churches were built on property he donated, and he paid for the construction of some of those churches. The golf course was donated by the Cartwright estate, and I could go on and on. I think the Heritage Committee didn't feel that was necessary because it was so obvious how important that building is. So thank you so much. I know it was longer than 3 minutes. It's much
No,
appreciated.
Thank you, Ms. Lynn. If you just, we just want to hang tight and see if there's any questions. I don't know if there is or not, but a very nice presentation. Thank you. Is there any questions for Ms. Lynn? No, seeing none. We're letting you off easy tonight. Thank you again. Thank you so much. So we'll look for a motion to note and receive the presentation, the unregistered deputation of Ms. Lynn, moved by Councillor Norrie, seconded by Councillor Martin. If there's no further comments, questions, or concerns, all in favor of that motion? Opposed? That motion is carried. And thank you, folks. The presentations were very good. Moving on, we'll look for a motion for the adoption of the minutes of the regular session of council for June 27th, 2023. Moved by Deputy Mayor Calver, seconded by Councillor Martin. If there's no comments or questions or concerns with respect to that, all in favor of that motion? Opposed? Motion's carried. Correspondence for information. Now, we've received a number of correspondence for information this evening. If there's something that someone wants to pull out, we'll separate that. Or if there's more than one, we'll separate those from the bulk of them, and then we can do a motion to note and receive. Go ahead, Councillor Hicks.
Through your worship. Item 12 in the correspondence for information is the letter from the Lennox and Addington Historical Society. And it's announced their dissolution after, and I'm sorry, I had the letter up and it's now it's disappeared. But I would like to make a motion that we acknowledge.
Okay, well, what we'll do is we'll pull that out of the other ones. We'll
Okay.
do the motion to note and receive the other ones, and then that way it'll give us an opportunity to have a fulsome conversation with that. Is there anything else that anybody else wants pulled out? Seeing none, what we'll do is we'll look for a motion to note and receive the correspondence for information, save and accept item number 12, which is the Heritage Society information, which we'll have a further discussion on. So who would like to move that motion? Moved by Councillor Pennell, seconded by Councillor Martin. If there's no further comments, questions, or concerns, all in favor of that motion? Opposed, motion's carried. Okay, Councillor Hicks, did you want a motion first? She'll make the motion. Okay, thanks. Go ahead, Councillor Hicks.
Through your worship, I'd like to move that the council receive with regret the notice of the dissolution of the Lennox and Addington Historical Society, and that council direct staff to send a letter to the society and to the members, the current members, expressing thanks for their legacy of hard work and contributions to the town and county. Just for any of those members that may be watching right now, I spent a lot of time at the McPherson House when I was, and I'll say little girl, when you could ride your bike at the age of 9 across town without being in fear of your life. And one of my favorite all-time books is The Secret of Willow Castle. So I spent a lot of time there, and they've done some wonderful, wonderful work. And I personally would just like to thank them.
Great. Thanks, Councillor Hicks. Councillor Hicks has made a motion to put on the floor. We'll look for someone to second that motion. Councillor Martin, is there any further comments or questions? I know Councillor Hicks did a marvelous job of speaking to this, and I have to agree with her in the fact that it is sometimes it's sad to see something that lasted so long and something that has done so much good work, especially with respect to a heritage building in our community, to finally come to an end, and it's really disheartening. So I'm glad that Councillor Hicks has pulled that out and made the motion that she has. Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Mayor. On a personal level, I'd like to wish all the members well and express my thanks for their contribution to LNA County. But in particular, Napanee, the society leaves quite a legacy starting back in 1907 to present. And they've preserved not only physical structures like Alan McPherson House, for instance, but history of people and documents that surely would have been lost to history without them. The collection, of course, is housed in the County Museum for the future. I find it rather ironic, actually, that we have those two items on the agenda together tonight, where the Cartwright House and as well the Historical Society ceasing to operate. I think it's important that we keep our historical roots intact and we never forget our humble beginnings and how we got to where we are today. So once again, I'd like to thank all the past members who are no longer with us, as well as the present members. All your efforts were deeply appreciated, and thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Councillor Martin. Well said. Is there any other further comments before we call for the vote? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion that's on the floor? Opposed? Motion's carried. And thanks, folks. I think it was a good discussion. So next up, we have correspondence for action. The first matter up is the intimate partner violence and violence against women correspondence. And I know that there's a young lady here that sat through a whole council meeting and she didn't have an opportunity to talk. Ms. Smith, if you want to come up, we're going to give you an opportunity to address this before we have a conversation. And I do apologize that I know sometimes our council meetings can be very riveting, but I'm sure you probably had better things to do 2 weeks ago. So go ahead, ma'am.
Thank you very much, Mayor Richardson and council. This motion is from Lanark County, and it is for all the municipalities, all 444 municipalities in Ontario, to declare that violence against women is an epidemic. And I don't know if you've had an opportunity to read the articles with the motion that came to you back in December, but I do certainly wish and hope that you will adopt this resolution and to declare that violence against women is an epidemic, but it doesn't stop there. This resolution should be circulated to the municipalities, as it has been, to local MPs and MPPs, the Association of Municipalities of Ontario, and this is where I'm hoping you will take this a step further. I don't know when the next meeting is with your Association of Municipalities, but I think that it is very, very important that all 444 municipalities get together to declare this. That way you will be putting pressure on the government of Ontario to declare it. Right now, they are just taking it on advisement. This is one of the the very first recommendation that came out of the coroner's inquest. And the government is just dragging its feet. So I really think that if all the municipalities put pressure on the government, then it will be declared, and a lot of good things will come from it. They will be able to bring laws, enforce laws to protect the women, especially in rural counties, and because they just don't have the protection. I think that's about all I need to say, except that, you know, every week an innocent woman is killed by violence, domestic violence, and across Canada, one in every 23 hours is killed. Another thing I would like to bring your attention to, this won't stop at Ontario. It should go across Canada, because one of the recommendations is for the criminal code to be revised to include the term femicide, murder of women because they are women. Right now, femicide is in the dialogue, but it hasn't really been declared in the criminal code. And again, once it is, then laws can be changed. But there again, it has to go across Canada. And if Ontario is on board, then each of the provinces hopefully will be in line with that. Thank
Thanks.
you.
Thank you, Ms. Smith. And I know in 30 years of police work, we've come a long, long way with respect to domestic violence, but there's still a long ways to go. There's no doubt about it. It's one of those things that you think you make strides and then you realize that you've probably fallen behind again. So, but thank you for coming this evening again and speaking to it. And we have a recommendation to receive the correspondence for action and also to look to council for a direction with respect to the motion from Lanark County. I'm not sure. Go ahead, Councillor Pennell.
Thank you, Worship. I'd like to make a motion, then put on the floor and talk a little bit more about it. Good.
Yep. Go ahead.
Okay, sorry. I'd like to make a motion that we note and receive the correspondence and that we support the motion made by the Lanark County, and that we send letters to our MP, our MPP, the Ministry of Attorney General, Justice for Women's Society and Economic Opportunity, and the Federal Ministry of Women's Issues, showing support.
Great. Thank you, Councillor Pennell. Councillor Pennell has put a motion on the floor, seconded by Councillor Norrie. Is there any further comments or questions with respect to the motion that's on the floor? Go ahead, Councillor Pennell.
Thank you, Worship. One of the recommendations that were included in the autopsy report from the coroner was that recommendation from the coroner is that the IPV be integrated into everybody's community and safety and well-being plan. And as you know, we've just got done doing ours in conjunction with Loyalist Township. And I note that on page 28 of our community safety wellbeing plan, bullet point number 5 speaks of domestic violence. So I'm proud to say that we've talked about that in our plan.
Yep, thank you. Thank you for bringing that up, Councilor Purnell. I think you bring up a very good point. So is there any other further conversation we'd like to have with respect to this correspondence for action? Seeing none, we'll call the question. All in favor of the motion that's on the floor? Opposed? Motion's carried. Thank you again, ma'am, and you're more than welcome to sit again through this evening's events. And
That's fine. Thank you.
it's always good to have a smiling face in the body of the council chamber. So thank you again.
And thank you, Councillor Pennell, for that extra motion about writing letters. That's wonderful. That's Women's Institutes, FWIO of Ontario. That's our next step as well. Thank you.
Great, thanks. Next up, we have a proclamation request, Prostate Cancer Awareness Month, September of 2023. And I believe that council has the proclamation in front of them. How do we want to deal with it? I'll look for a motion to put on the floor with respect to this proclamation. Go ahead, Councilor Pennell.
I'll just make the motion. I just lost it.
Yep.
Sorry.
The recommendation is that council proclaim September 2023 as the Prostate Cancer Awareness Month in the town of Greater Napanee. I suspect that's probably the motion that you want to make.
I thank you very much, sir.
Very good. Councilor Pennell has put a motion on the floor, seconded by Deputy Mayor Calver. Is there any further information with respect to this proclamation? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion? Opposed, motion's carried. And of course, another very, very important proclamation with respect to prostate cancer. Unfortunately, if you live long enough being a man in our society, we're probably going to experience it. So very, very sad to think about it that way, but that's just the reality of it. So thanks, folks. Is there any unfinished business? Seeing none. Staff reports. First up is the application by owner to remove the heritage designation from 89 Thomas Street, the Cartwright building. Do we have a staff member that'll speak to this, Madam Clerk, or is this something that is yours?
Your Worship, I can speak to this report if necessary. You have already heard 3 deputations on the topic. As you can see, there are 3 options presented to you tonight. So we would be looking for council to indicate their support for one of those options.
Great. Thank you very much, Madam Clerk. Who is there anybody that would like to start with respect to this? Go ahead, Councillor Nori.
I move option 2.
And just give me a second. I have to read an option 2. The recommendation of the option 2 for the folks that are watching at home is the recommendation of the Municipal Heritage Committee that the heritage designation not be removed from the building at 89 Thomas Street, Cartwright building be upheld due to the heritage value provided to the community. Councillor Nori has put a motion on the floor with respect to that option. Do we have a seconder? I have Councillor Hicks. So the motion's on the floor. Do we want to have any further conversation? I know we've had we've listened to some very robust presentations here this evening. Does anybody else want to comment? Go ahead, Councillor Hicks.
Through your worship, I would like to see more detailed numbers. I would like to see timelines on what it's going to take to rehabilitate the building. Suitable for use, not necessarily as office space. I think to the Via Rail Station where we're looking to repurpose a municipal building. I think that's something that could be, I don't know, a tea room, a conference center. There must be something that can be done with that building to maintain it and possibly to generate some sort of revenue. But I'm wholeheartedly in agreement with not removing that designation at this time.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hicks. I have to agree is that it just seems a little preemptive at this point. There's too many unknowns with respect to it. I mean, even if we did have some of the knowns, it still may not be in the cards, but there just seems to be too many unknowns. We really don't know what the future of it is. We're just being asked to remove it so that somebody can make a decision on it. And I'm tendency to agree with you on that. So is there any other further comments or questions? Seeing none, we'll call the vote. All in favor of the motion that's on the floor? Opposed? Motion's carried. Parking enforcement options. We have a staff report with respect to a matter that I think we dealt with at their last meeting, I think, if I'm not mistaken, Madam Clerk, and I believe this one may be yours.
Yes, so through your worship, this report is presented just to follow up on some of the discussion that happened at our last council meeting. There are some options presented in the short term for ways to improve or enhance our parking enforcement this year, as well as some potential considerations that we can look at when we're setting budget for 2024. I do just want to provide a verbal update. The statistics were accurate when I wrote this report, but I believe the day after it was published, we did issue 6 tickets during one of our evening shifts at that boat launch. So we are seeing some effect from doing the evening and weekend enforcement at that location.
Thanks, Madam Clerk. Would anybody like to comment or speak to this before we look for a motion? Okay, go ahead, Councillor Purnell.
Thank you, worship. I'd like to make a motion that the councils choose status quo, option number 1, in respect to our current budget, and revisit this during our 2024 budget deliberations. And yeah, thank you.
Great. Councillor Purnell has put a motion on the floor. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Martin seconds that. Is there any further comments or questions or queries with respect to the motion that's on the floor? Go ahead, Deputy Mayor Calver. Yeah, thanks, Deputy. We've got a motion on the floor, and I think if I understand the status quo is that there will be continued enforcement in that area using the resources that we have, knowing farewell that we may be stealing some resources from one end to support the parking. I think, am I correct with that interpretation, Madam Clerk?
Through your worship, that's correct. Starting in June, we did move to shift 10 to 15% of our enforcement hours to land on evenings and weekends, with primary focus being patrolling of this area as well as other parking areas in the community, as well as dedicating more time during the work week to that. We are taking that away from our timelines on dealing with grass and yards nuisance complaints. So we will see those have a slower turnaround time as a result. We've also had conversations with the businesses in that area to see if they can also help us promote that message of having the boat launch parking be for boats. And we believe we're seeing some good results from that. There are other options we're aware, we just don't have the budget for them this year. And some of them, if we were to hire more staff, we don't have the time to get that done in a reasonable period for this year. So our only other option would be to pull from reserves for some additional contracted enforcement.
Great. Thank you for that, Madam Clerk. Is there any further comments or questions with respect to the motion that's on the floor? Seeing none, we'll call the vote. All in favor of the motion that's on the floor? Opposed? Motion's carried. Next up is the Cataraqui Conservation Authority cost apportioning agreement for the locally supported services. And I believe, Madam Clerk, you're going to speak to this one as well.
Yes, through your worship, this agreement was presented in draft at the last meeting and council did not indicate any concerns. So at this point, we're just looking for authority to execute the agreement.
Yeah, thank you very much, Madam Clerk. And if I remember, it was just slightly higher than what last year. I think we had a conversation that it's up and around the $73,000 mark for the levy with the kind of Cataraqui Conservation Authority. So I'll look for a motion, staff recommendation, Councillor Norrie. So moved by Counselor Nori, seconded by Counselor Hicks. If there's no further comments, questions, or concerns, all in favor of that motion? Opposed? That motion is carried. Next up, I believe, is infrastructure services, and I see Mr. Defoe coming up to the desk. Utilities, emergency purchase, spare sewage lift station pump. Go ahead, Mr. Defoe.
Through your worship, I won't dive into the technical details. The report's fairly detailed. I'll just make just a couple of quick points. So basically, the purchase was to put a critical piece of equipment back on the shelf so we don't find ourselves in an emergency state. And the comments with respect to perhaps funding it with the capital maintenance reserves if the operating budget goes over. Typically, the utilities is about in that $100,000 ballpark range under budget on an annual basis. So there will be no financial impact to this purchase.
Great. Thanks, Pete. Is there any questions or comments for Mr. Defoe with respect to what's in front of us tonight? Yeah, go ahead, Councillor Pennell.
Thank you, worship. Through you, Peter, have we received this pump by now? Has it been delivered?
Through your worship, I believe it's already in the shop. It's one of those things where if you need it, it's too late if you don't already have it. So
Okay, thank you.
you're into flooded basements and things really go wrong.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Pennell. Is there any other questions? Go ahead, Deputy Mayor Calver.
Yeah, Pete, I see that I believe we're running 7 different lift stations, and this pump will service, was it 5 of the 7? Is there any plans down the road to get all 7 running the same pump so we are a little more versatile?
Through your worship, so the 2 other stations are a dry well, wet well configuration, so they're completely different. So the pumps are not compatible. There's other backup contingencies for those 2 stations.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Deputy Mayor. Is there any other questions or comments for Mr. Defoe? Seeing none, we've got a recommendation in front of us that the council received for information. The report of utilities emergency purchase, and further that council approved the purchase, the sole sourcing of a Sulzer pump from Boyd Electric, and further that council approved the use of the utilities capital maintenance reserve funds to cover any overages in the utilities operation budget that may result from this specific purpose. Moved by Deputy Mayor Cower, seconded by Councillor Martin. There's no further comments, questions, or concerns? All in favor of that motion? Opposed? Motion's carried. Growth and expansion, PLZACO 2023-025 rezoning G&M South. And I see Mr. Novus has come up. Go ahead, Michael.
Thank you, Your Worship. So the public meeting associated with this rezoning was held at the last meeting of council. The applicant was in attendance, as well as one of the neighbors who had some general inquiries regarding the application. Staff have followed up with that neighbor, and there are no outstanding concerns to be had regarding the application. So staff have reviewed, we've conferred with other town departments, as well as the Ministry of the Environment, as it relates to the reduced setback to the waste management site known as the Roblin Waste Transfer Station. There are no concerns given groundwater flow direction. There's a very minimal amount, relatively minimal amount of waste in the former landfill. There's not anticipated to be large amounts of noxious gases such as methane leaving the site. Overall, we do not anticipate nuisance related impacts as a result of odor or groundwater or surface water contamination, given the small scale of the Roblin Waste Transfer Site in the former landfill there. So staff don't have any concern with the proposal. We are supportive of council approving the requested rezoning to facilitate that land severance and ultimately a future residence being established on that severed parcel.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Michael. Is there any questions of Michael with respect to that's before us this evening? Seeing none, we've got a staff recommendation before you. Who would like to make that recommendation? Moved by Councillor Nori, seconded by Councillor Hicks. If there's no further comments, questions, or concerns, all in favor of that motion? Opposed, motion's carried. Thanks, Michael. Next up is growth and expansion, PLSUBF 2022-095, Millhouse Yards Phase 2 pre-servicing report. Go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. So like phase one, which saw the extension and connection of Heritage Park Drive to the south and the northerly ends, that proceeded under a pre-servicing agreement. It's a very commonplace to do that. It allows the developer to install in-ground infrastructure and construct roads ahead of the final plan of subdivision approval. So they can install the infrastructure. They can't connect anything to our existing water main network or sewer network. So they're taking the risk all upon themselves, and we will not be assuming any infrastructure until final plan approval. So it really just gives them a little bit of a head start on getting that infrastructure installed prior to final subdivision approval being granted and ultimately building permits then being able to be issued to construct on these lots to be created. So this doesn't create the lots. This allows the developer to install the infrastructure, and then the lot creation follows shortly thereafter once that infrastructure has been advanced to a certain point and inspected and reviewed by the municipality. So it's very commonplace. You will be seeing a similar request for the subdivision lands to the north of Canvers Way to proceed under a pre-servicing agreement for those lands as well. So staff are certainly supportive of the request of the developer to execute a pre-servicing agreement to allow that infrastructure to be installed and road network to be constructed prior to final plan of subdivision approval being granted and the lots actually being legally created such that building permits can then follow. So if there's any questions regarding this, I'd certainly be open to answering those.
Great. Thank you, Michael. Is there any questions to Michael with respect to the report before you and the information he's provided? Seeing none, we've got a recommendation the council received for information, the growth and expansion PLSUBF 2022-095. Millhouse Yards Phase 2 pre-servicing report, and further that council authorized the mayor and the clerk to execute the pre-servicing agreement on behalf of the municipality. Moved by Councillor Pennell, seconded by Councillor Martin. If there's no further comments, questions, or concerns, all in favor of that motion? Opposed? Motion's carried. Thanks, Michael. Next up, do we have a procurement review? I believe that would be Ms. Davison. Come on up, Nicole.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, in addition to what is in the report, staff of the town or in addition to the information in the staff report, the town is undertaking a procurement review, which will review the past and current town procurements, as it has been determined that there have been deviations from the procurement bylaw policies and procedures. It is my understanding that on January 13th, 2022, which is prior to my time of joining the town, there was internal training provided to staff from the previous treasurer and the director of operational audits regarding the updated procurement bylaw, which had been passed on September 28th, 2021. Thanks to the power of online meetings, we have a listing of all in attendance, and the meeting lasted about 1 hour and 30 minutes. From the training documents I have found, the goal of this session was to provide staff with a high-level overview of the procurement policy, review spending and signing authorities, and different types of procurement methods based on spending levels and types. This was to help ensure that all staff understood their roles and responsibilities. Earlier this year, I also recirculated that same procurement bylaw to all town staff and advised them that they had a responsibility to abide by the bylaw and the procedures within. The scope of this review begins, but is not limited to mid-2021 to cover the period of budget preparation for 2022 to current day. KPMG will be reviewing procurement for goods, services, constructions, and credit card transactions to determine if there are any irregular procurements and or risks or gaps in our current processes and procedures.
Great, thanks. Thank you very much, Nicole, for that. Is there any questions or comments with respect to either the report or the presentation that Nicole has just given us? Seeing none. Thank you, Nicole. I think this is going to be a very important part of our term of council right now. So thank you for doing that. Thank you for providing the report and the information that you provided this evening. And we'll work our way through this for sure. We'll make sure that we'll get this resolved. So thank you very much. I'll look for a motion to, let me see what the motion is. Receive for information the procurement review report, note and receive, moved by Councillor Norrie, seconded by Councillor Martin. If there's no further comments, questions, or concerns, all in favor of that motion? Opposed? Motion's carried. Thanks again, Michelle, or Nicole. Next up is the Microsoft license renewal. And because you haven't moved, I'm thinking that you're up next for that. So go ahead, Nicole.
Yes, so through you, Mr. Mayor. So on behalf of our IT manager who is on annual leave, this procurement is to renew our ongoing Microsoft licenses. We are leveraging the provincial vendor of record program, which allows us to obtain our Microsoft licenses at a discounted price. We are asking to enter into a 3-year contract. The total value of the contract is $158,807, or $53,935 per year for 3 years. There's roughly an average, or there's roughly a total savings of $60,000 if we enter into this contract and leverage the provincial program that's available to us.
Great. Thanks a bunch, Nicole. Is there any questions with respect to the report? Go ahead, Councillor Pennell.
Thank you, Worship. Through you, Nicole. This is included in our budget now.
That is correct, yes.
Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Pennell. Is there any other further questions or comments for Nicole? Seeing none, we have a recommendation to note and receive the information from the IT department Microsoft license renewal report, moved by Councillor Hicks, seconded by Deputy Mayor Calver. If there's no further comments, questions, or concerns, all in favor of that motion? Opposed? Motion's carried. Bylaws, bylaw number 2023-0048 to amend the zoning bylaw 0222 as amended PLZACO 2023-025. This bylaw is to authorize a zoning amendment previously listed on the report, assuming the motion to approve was carried. And sorry, which it was. Very much. Thank you, Madam Clerk. We'll have 3 readings of that bylaw. We'll need a motion to put it on the floor. Moved by Deputy Mayor Calver, seconded by Councillor Pennell. We're at a first. If there's no comments or questions, let's check first. Seeing none, read a first, second, and finally passed this 11th day of July. Did I call the vote on that? All in favor of that motion? Opposed? Motion's carried. New business. Is there any new business that anyone wishes to bring up this evening? Seeing none, notice the motions. Are there any notice the motions that anyone would like to make this evening? Seeing none, statements by members. Does anybody have any? I see Pennell, Councillor Pennell's hand go up and then Councillor Norrie. So go ahead, Councillor Pennell.
Thank you, Worship. I just want to thank the town of Napanee for putting on a great Canada Day. I had the fortunate pleasure of being there to manufacture or make and serve the popcorn along with Bethany Chadwick. It was one of those things where the popcorn you can never keep up, and something like that the residents really like. So it was a great day. The weather held out for us. I want to thank the staff that was there to help us out for that. And also the fireworks show too was fantastic. So thank you for everybody for putting that on. Thanks to the fire services for putting on the trucks and the bouncy castle inside for the youngins. And I mean, we always like to see young children looking at the trucks and the shiny lights. And we saw a person tonight that's might not be a youngin, but definitely likes shiny lights and air horns, so, and fire trucks. So thank you. I just want to say once again, thank you very much.
Thanks. Thank you very much, Councillor Pennell. I know that I've received a number of favorable comments with respect to it as well. So it's always good to see young smiling faces having fun and overloading on popcorn. So thank you very much. Councillor Norrie, go ahead.
Thank you. I also have a shout out from Sunday, our first music festival in the Springside Park or Springside Confederation Park. Shout out to Annie Mannion and her student Chris. They did an excellent job setting up. Music was good. Unfortunately, we had quite a few vendors down there. Someone ran a little market, so we had a lot of people. Weather was good, and I owe Annie one for getting me up to do an announcement. So record show. Well, congratulations to staff, and we have 3 more, 1 a week next Sunday and then 2 in August. So just watch the paper.
Great. Thank you very much, Councillor Norrie. And I know that you're never, ever short of words. So I'm sure you did a very wonderful job. So are there any other statements by members? Seeing none, CAO remarks, Mr. Pinson.
Thank you, Worship. Councillors Pennell and Norrie have done a good job of stealing my thunder for thanking staff for both Canada Day and Music in the Park. But again, thank you. An individual thank you to Nicole, who is going to depart soon. I want to thank her for all of her efforts and what she's done for the town of Greater Napanee. She will be missed. I know it's hard to leave. And as I get ready to depart the town of Greater Napanee, I want to thank all staff for their helping me over the last couple of years. I've said this too many times to staffs, but leadership is a privilege and it's an honor. And I take it very seriously. And I thank all of the staff that have helped me move things forward. It's been a great time. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Pinson. I'm suspecting that you are going to be here for our next meeting, are you not? Okay. Thank you. The forward calendar. I know we've all had an opportunity to take a look at it. Is there anything that anybody wants to talk or add to with respect to the forward calendar? Go ahead, Councillor Hicks.
Just a quick question through your worship. Who's attending AMO in August? I know I'm not.
Yeah, I know there is a number of us, Councillor Purnell, Deputy Mayor Calver, myself. I think that may be it. And there may be some staff members as well. It's going to be dependent, I think, on, I think we're waiting for a response with respect to a delegation that we may have. But I see Madam Clerk is maybe going to glean some light on that.
No, through your worship, I was just going to say that if our delegation request is successful, we intend to have a staff member attend. And we're hoping to hear back from that in the next week or so, but we haven't heard back yet.
Great. Thanks for that update, Madam Clerk. So there are a number of us anyways. So is there anything else with respect to the forward calendar? Seeing none, we'll look for a motion to confirm the proceedings, a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the Council of the Corporation of Town of Greater Napanee. Moved by Councillor Hicks, seconded by Deputy Mayor Calver. Read a first, second, and finally passed this 11th day of July, 2023. All in favor of the motion? Opposed? Motion's carried. Motion for adjournment. Moved by Deputy Mayor Calver, seconded by Councillor Martin. If there's no further comments, questions, or concerns, all in favor of that motion? Opposed? Motion's carried. Thanks, folks. It's an early evening. And we'll be back in a couple of weeks. It may not be quite so early in 2 weeks, but thanks for watching and we'll see you then. Thanks.